That's Tyler Lay, and the CEO of PAYONIC, the neuroscientist, the electrical engineer, the one, the only Dr. Aadeel Akhtar.
Well, thank you, Tommy. Appreciate it, and good afternoon, San Diego. As Tommy mentioned, I'm Tyler Lay. I'm on our innovation economy team, and I work with technology and disruptive commerce companies. And I'm pleased to be sitting here with Aadeel, or Dr. Aadeel Akhtar, I should say, through your grand intro, founder and CEO of PAYONIC. You've been with about 18 years now, right?
Yeah. Ever since I started undergrad, my personal name has been through Chase, and it was a natural fit for when I started the company.
We love it. We're glad to have you here, and your technology is just so cool and so impressive, and it's been acknowledged in MIT Review, Newsweek. You even got a deal from the Sharks on Shark Tank with everything, and we're just honored to have you with us today. So I appreciate you taking the time on. I think let's start with your journey about entrepreneurship. I know you're on the Unshakables podcast, which is a great podcast for all of you out there. Definitely subscribe to that. For those of you that don't know, the podcast is led by CEO Ben Walter, and he engages with small business owners and talks about their journey in entrepreneurship. And I think on that podcast, you shared a story, and you shared the same story with me the first time we met. I thought it was a pretty moving story about, how you went on a family trip to Pakistan, and kind of sparked the whole idea for PAYONIC. I would love if you could just tell our audience here a little bit about your journey, what kind of led and motivated you to create PAYONIC, and really make mobility accessible to folks.
Absolutely, it's a great pleasure to be here in San Diego and being able to do this every day. And so at PAYONIC, we develop advanced bionic limbs that are accessible for both humans and robots. And for me, this journey started when I was 7 years old. So my parents are from Pakistan, as you were mentioning. I was born in the Chicago area, and I was visiting Pakistan for the first time in my life. And that was actually the first time I met someone missing a limb. And she was my age, with her right leg using a tree branch as a crutch. It's what inspired me to go into the field. So I went to Loyola Chicago for undergrad, got a bachelor's in biology, master's in computer science, taught there for a couple of years. Then went to the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, got another master's in electrical and computer engineering, PhD in neuroscience, and then I left medical school to do this because this was much more fun. But when I was doing my PhD, we got the chance to work with a nonprofit called the Rich Motion Project. Their mission is to provide prosthetics to those who can't afford them, primarily in Guatemala and Ecuador. And this is part of a much longer story of 2 weeks of all-nighters that was actually on the Unshakables. But our first patient ever on Tsukio, he had lost his left hand 35 years prior due to a landmine explosion. And he, in front of international news stations, said he felt as though a part of him had come back. And that was because he made a pinch with his left hand for the first time in 35 years. And so when he said that, that's when I realized if I finished medical school and go to academia, this just ends up as a journal paper. And if we want everyone to feel the same way that one did, we had to commercialize this technology. And that's what PAYONIC was about.
So cool. It's such an important thing to be able to give back to people. And one of the things that I think is the coolest thing about your product is the dexterity on it, and how nimble it is and agile, which I think is so important to folks, and with the knee, limbs and all that. And I think how does it work? Can you walk us through just kind of how it works and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for our human users, so I'm in trouble with these two buttons here, but if I were missing my hand, then I would use my muscles to control. So I have 2 muscle sensors. It's kind of like if I flex my wrist in, the hand closes. If I extend my wrist out, the hand comes back up and go back and forth. If I flex my wrist very lightly, I can control the speed of it, goes slowly. If I open it again when it's open, you can switch a different grip. So pinch, if you got a rock, so you can lock off. And one of our user favorites is the finger wave. Hello, everyone. You can do a nice chill finger wave if you wanted to as well. And so everything is self-contained in the hand itself. So if I was missing my hand, I get a socket made and put my arm inside of that, and we attach the hand on the end of it. And if you're on a robot, then we can just attach the hand to the robot. And we have humanoid robots from NASA's humanoid astronaut robot Valkyrie that they want to send into space, Amazon, Google, Meta, they're all using it for robotics. Automotive companies, Mercedes-Benz is even putting cars together. It's the same hand that goes on humans that goes on robots.
That's so impressive. The future is here. The future is One of the things that I think is really unique about your business is kind of like the dual path you have here with robotics and then also helping folks in need. And like making the advanced like bionic limbs more affordable and accessible is like a key component to your business and the healthcare industry and med tech. So how did you identify the need for the high tech kind of robotic hand?
And our goal has always been to make the most advanced bionic tech accessible, right? So this is the first hand that users touch feedback. So Sergeant Garrett Anderson, our very first user in the US, he also came in Rocky 2005. He can actually feel from our hand and touch sensors on here. He told us he can actually feel his daughter's hand with the prosthetic. And at the same time, we wanted to make this accessible, right? So we actually got this hand covered by Medicare in the US. So they expanded access from 10% of patients who could afford this, which was either for the VA or workplace, or had a workplace accident, to 75% of patients in America. And that was really important for us that they could get that accessibility. Now, the thing is that that still leaves 25% on Medicaid or uninsured or underinsured that can't afford anything like this. And 80% of people in developing nations who can't afford bionic technology like this. And so for them, we set up a fund called the Mobility Fund. And we partnered with the Range of Motion Project. We worked with 10 years ago when we started the company. And every $25,000 that's donated completely covers all the medical costs and the device cost for a bionic hand like ours, and donates a leg to someone in Guatemala. So it's an arm and a leg for $25K, which is typically like around $50K. And you mentioned the robotic side as well too. And so what we've been seeing on the robotic side is this huge explosion of AI coming on board, not being applied physically to humanoid robots or robot arms. And because it's the same hand that goes to both, what we can do is that those high volumes can try to price down lower for everyone. That we might even be able to hit a price point that Medicaid and development nations for the near future. So it's going to be really exciting.
That's fantastic. And it's amazing how you're able to balance giving back and making things accessible with also growing and scaling the business in a meaningful, profitable way for you all. Really impressive on that. And like along those lines, I know my clients, I check with them all the time. Being an entrepreneur is an absolute roller coaster. I would never choose to do it, but bless you all who choose to do it because it's so important these days. How do you stay like so resilient during like the ups and downs and the uncertainties? Like we have a lot of folks in the room who are founding their own business. Like they see you up here, see how you scale the business. Like how do you keep that all?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to two things. It's having grit, like just being able to persevere through a lot of tough times. I mean, one example was that back in the summer of 2017, so I had gone to China, in Shenzhen in particular, still the number capital of the world, right? And we were looking for motors and gears in particular. And it was me, my wife, who was 6 months pregnant at the time, our 1.5-year-old son, my first employee ever who was my undergraduate student at the time, 3 other students in a small high-rise in Shenzhen for 2.5 months. And only one of us spoke Chinese, and it wasn't me, and it wasn't my wife. You can imagine how crazy that was. And we were trying to do an Indiegogo campaign where we were trying to raise $250,000 to really get this off the ground. And we ended up raising $7,000. So it was a huge failure, right? Like, and by the end of that year, we had $200 left in our bank accounts, and we were like, oh my goodness, we're going to make it. And that summer, we had applied for our first small business innovation research grant from the National Science Foundation. And that December, we found out that we were getting it. So the first week of January, we went from $200 in our bank to $200,000 in our bank account, which is more money than we ever had. So it's really a crazy roller coaster of like these low lows and these high highs. And as long as it keeps just increasing, that's the best part. And this year, we became profitable. So that was
a huge milestone. And what's real quickly, what's one piece of like practical advice you give someone as they're looking to scale this business, going through all those ups and downs and those roller coasters? Like, how would you kind of look after this room and advise folks on how to do that?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing is that there's no one way to do it. There's no one right answer. That's what one of the things Kathleen was pointing out in her talk. And it's kind of like a lot of the time the job of the CEO is to take in as many opinions and as much guidance as possible from as many people as possible and kind of chart your own path forward. And that's really how we approach Psionic as well too, just by listening and learning from so many people and figuring out, oh, these are all these different options, what would be the best for Psionic? So keeping an open mind and really just persevering through all those tough times, I think that's going to be it's a recipe for success.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And like, I think you're a fantastic example of like the entrepreneurial spirit here in San Diego. You're growing the business, you're scaling it, you're moving in a new facility, you're hiring people. What do you see for the future, Sionic, and where does it go from here?
Yeah, so we moved to San Diego about 3 years ago from Illinois, the University of Illinois. And we moved here for a very particular reason. There were only 7 of us at the time when we moved here. Now there's 51 of us. Our new facility that we just moved into a month ago is 4.5 times bigger. It's 22,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet. And we moved here, one of the big reasons was we're working very closely with the Navy Hospital and on the next generation of these bionic limbs, as well as the University of California, San Diego. So we're working with Dr. James Flint, an orthopedic surgeon at the Navy, and Dr. Kate Hinchcliffe at the University of California, San Diego, who's a hand surgeon. And what we're doing with them is that instead of having a socket that you put your arm into, which is typical for this, we've got titanium implants that go into your bones and on your body that we test directly to your bones. And instead of having the muscle sensors on the outside, we have fine microwire electrodes that can go into your nerves directly, then go outside of that titanium implant. And the idea there is that instead of doing these like pre-programmed grips that I showed you earlier, you actually be able to do individual finger control. And instead of feeling like a vibration on your skin from these touch sensors, it'll actually stimulate the nerves to make you feel like it's coming from your hand that you're missing. And to kind of demonstrate like the type of control we're talking about, we're going to do something fun here. So you're going to get to control this hand.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you knew you were going to be controlling this hand, but so we've got an app for it. There's an app for everything. And an app for your hand just makes sense. So there's Bluetooth on here. I'm connected to the hand over Bluetooth. And what we're going to do is that you just put your hand in front of the camera on my phone, just like that, and you bend your fingers.
Wow. That's incredible. Wow. That's amazing. And just how computer is able to do that. I can only imagine when it's connected to like the actual inner workings of your body.
Exactly, and our goal there is that when we start clinical trials on this hopefully in a couple of years, that we'll have our first patients playing the piano or keyboard again, because they'll have that level of dexterity.
Thank you so much for joining with us, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Pleasure.